What's up, everybody? Glad you could be hanging out with us for another Theological Sidebars. So, here's the deal. Going to be talking about something that came up, something you really can't go into as much on a Sunday, but it's this topic of, payment for being a minister of the gospel, okay? So, here's the deal. We're reading in this passage in Matthew chapter 10, and notice what he says. He says he wants them to go out. As you go, proclaim the kingdom of heaven as it come near, heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you received, freely give. So that leads to the question, right? Should ministry staff, should pastors expect compensation? I don't know about you, but I remember the first time, I think I was a kid, I realized, pastors get paid? What? What's that all about? Kind of a shocking idea, but, you got to kind of think, right? This is their job, how do they do that? So, let's think this one through. If you stop right there in the passage, then you might be able to say, yeah, so there you go, right? This is why church doesn't need my tithe. This is why church shouldn't get a dime, because, pastors and people they should all be volunteer. No one gets paid. First off, let's stop with that. Your church doesn't need your tithe. God doesn't need your tithe. If God wants to do whatever he wants to do, he'll take care of that. This is, I think, two pieces that we need to look at. This is just as much a discussion about how staff and ministry should function in relation to finances as it is how you give, okay? So two pieces to this. First and foremost, big principle is, at the core, ministry staff, pastors should not be people who will withhold the ministry because of funding. Let me explain. There should not be in our mindset of, I will not go and talk with that person. I will not go and share because I don't know what I'm getting out of it. Okay? You could probably think back not that far to maybe certain, TV preachers or things like that who maybe had kind of a quota. I've heard this, and I've tried to verify some of this. So I'm not going to say the name, but I know one in particular that apparently the church had to reach. He was a TV preacher, so church had to reach a certain amount of money for him to then be able to go on, and he would preach. And so if they didn't reach it, he wouldn't go on. That kind of stuff I think is obvious. Like, no, we're not that. We're not like like you would say, like rock stars who have to, have the 1,000 brown M&Ms in order to go out. The reality is, if you've been called out and sent out by Jesus, you should go whether there's money in it or not. Now, that being said, here's what happens sometimes. Because the money piece is something where, we're not in it for the money. You shouldn't be in it for the money. If you're a believer, if you're a minister, you should not be in it for the money. Now, that being said, money is an issue. Right? Money is an issue. So how do you take care of yourself? Well, look at the rest of this passage, right? Notice what else Jesus teaches them. So he says this, so freely you receive, freely give. Don't acquire gold, silver, copper for your money belts. Don't take a traveling bag for the road, extra shirt, sandals, or staff for the workers worthy of his food. When you enter the town, village, find out who is worthy. Stay there until you leave. Now, here's what's going on. What he's saying is, don't depend on yourself. Okay? And he's saying, I'm going to use others to help you. The workman is worthy of his food. So essentially saying that you trust me, you give, you're not in this for the cash, you're not in this for the money, and you trust that I am going to work through these people to take care of you. Okay, so that's kind of what we're beginning to see as maybe the relationship here. So then let's look a little bit more at what do we see on finances in general with ministry staff and ministers. So why do you? Okay, obviously you need money because it's different, right? This is, if you have a full-time staff, or if you have staff that they're going to spend hours and hours do this, there's got to be some aspect of they need to be cared for, right? Because what happens is people say, oh, no, we can do volunteer. And then here's what happens with a lot of volunteers. Sometimes volunteers don't do their job. If that doesn't happen, things fall down. But I digress. Here's the thing I want to bring up. Paul will start to talk a little bit more about people who share the gospel, pastors, ministry staff. Notice what he says here. In the same way, the Lord has commanded that those who preach the gospel should earn their living by the gospel. Now, that being said, right, we're still saying that that it's going to be not out of compulsion. It's not going to be out of the part of the pastor saying, I will not, I cannot, I do not do this. But it's going to be out of unless I get this certain amount, it's going to be out of the church having to say, this is what we will do for you. This is what we would like to do for you. You understand that the gospel is not to be something that's charged for, but yet as these people go, it is God who will be working through his people to help them to take care of the people that he's put there. So think about it like this. If you were to think about the Old Testament, right? In the Old Testament, you had priests and Levites who were doing the ministry. Here's the thing. Priests and Levites did not get the land. Okay? When you think about the 12 tribes that get carved up, Levi is not considered a tribe. They're a tribe, but they're not considered given a tribal allotment. So meaning Joseph actually had 2 sons, and those broke off. Joseph is not one tribe, he's 2 tribes. Blessings of the firstborn are given to him, even though he wasn't the firstborn, because all the other brothers kind of blew that. So that being said, the tribes settle in, and then God makes provision. He puts Levites and he puts priests in every area, and they'd get little cities, but the way that they are provided for is not by the same means that everybody else is. Everybody else has their own farms, they have their own tracts of land, and so they do all of that. These guys, this is their job, is to help lead the people, to teach the people. And so what does God do is he uses the system of tithes and offerings to go in to be able to support those who would then help provide spiritual guidance for the people. Now, that being said, one more little principle that we would want to look at as well from the Bible is Paul, as he brings up this, as he says this about elders. He says, the elders who are good leaders are to be considered worthy of double honor, especially those who work hard at preaching and teaching. For the scripture says, do not muzzle an ox while it's treading out the grain, and the worker is worthy of his wages. So that being said, right, is Paul's making it very clear that you need to take care of your ministry leaders, especially, I like to say this, I'm the preacher, right? But that's not a reason for you people to say, well, does he really work hard at preaching and teaching? I don't necessarily know if I agree. That's not for you to decide. Well, I mean, I guess you could, but regardless, there is this relationship that I just think we want to work through, right? Which is this, is that ministry staff, we should not be in it for the money. We should not be in it to say, I need this, I'm going to have a dollar amount, right? But money is something you need. So if pastors are moving from one church to they've been called to a new area, you got to ask smart questions, right? But there are times where you got to say, I'm going to trust the Lord on this. The flip side of this, I think happens is churches sometimes may take advantage of this, which is you're not supposed to be in the money anyways. So what could you get by on? Right? So they want to low ball, and they're not actually doing the job of taking care of their ministry staff. They're not doing the job of taking care of their pastors and their leaders. And so I think it goes both ways here, right? So churches, I think this is a call for minister leaders to kind of look and say, am I in this for the cash? Am I in this for the money? Do I make my decisions of where I go, based on what kind of financial gain I will get out of it? The people that I interact with, do I go after the richer ones? That kind of thing. And James talks about the favoritism piece, so we can deal with that and just toss that one out. But it also goes for the church, right? Which is, don't just say, well, he's supposed to be doing it out of the goodness of his heart and out of free, because it's free, to say, therefore, let's let him continue to have that treasure built up in heaven. While the Lord gives treasure in heaven, absolutely, he's also calling the church to give and to provide for its leaders. And so look at that, think that one through a little bit, and recognize, what's my role in this? What is your role? If you're connected to a local church, do you support the ministry of the local church? I'll say this too. Some people say, well, I give to this ministry and this ministry and this ministry, and you really don't give as much to your local ministry. Are you supporting the work of the people that minister to you? I'll say this too. Let me launch on one more for you. This might be helpful. What about you who attend one church, but then go to other churches for their other programs and for other things? So maybe you say, well, I like the kids program at but I like the preaching at this one. Okay. And then you got a dilemma, right? Because now you're having two churches minister to you. And that's a loyalty thing I think we should probably work through. Maybe another time on Theological Sidebars, because I feel like I'm starting to get into a bunch of different territory. Maybe on an OTXNT when I sit down with Dr. Marquez sometime. But I think about the support that you should have for your local ministry. Those who minister to you, are you sharing in that? Remember in the story of Exodus when they were building the tabernacle, and it says that God stirred the hearts of the people to provide everything that they needed. So much so did he stir the hearts of their people that at some point he had to say, the people had to say, stop, that we have too much stuff. But that came, though, from God stirring the hearts of his people to get them ready to support that work. So, two things. If you're going into ministry, don't do it for the cash. Don't do it for the money. Do it because you love the Lord. Do it because you want to see people changed and saved. It's not about the cash. It's not about the he sees everything. If you want to keep Matthew in context, Jesus sees everything in context already. He already sees your life. He sees your intentions, everything. Let him be the judge of that. If you're trying to make ministry decisions about where to go, what to do, maybe you're not in a church right now. Maybe you're trying to get into a place. Consider calling first. You've got to be smart, though. You've got to feed your family. You've got to be able to make that. But it might be that God may call you to something lesser in terms of finances, but he has great plans, and he's got ways to supplement that in the meantime. Those are real things. You don't want to be stupid when it comes to finance, but you also want to have that faith. There's that line there. And as a church, if you're a member of a church, think about, how can I support and take on the work of the ministry by blessing those who are doing the work? Is my heart stirred to help them if they're willing to do this job? Because let's face it, there are many guys who are in this job. They could be doing anything, making more money, finding ways to do more things. They could get, but they've chosen to be here. They've chosen to give those things up here for you. And so do you take that on? So if you're listening to whatever church context you're in, I don't care if you're at Royal Palms or whatever, but are you supporting your staff? Are you supporting your ministry leaders? My hope is that your ministry leaders are taking the same kind of mindset that Jesus has given his, which is let them, don't worry about all this stuff. Give and let the church, let God work through that. So I know that's hard. It's kind of weird to kind of think through all of that and how that all works, but I hope that does bless you. I hope that is something that that you can kind of work with and think on a little bit more. And I hope that maybe spurs you to action for how you can be a support in your church to your staff and to your leaders God's placed over you. Okay, that's all I got for now. I'll talk to you guys a little bit later. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And hey, look out, because I think OTXNT drops tomorrow. It'll be another good podcast to watch or listen to. Bye.